Welcome to our next seminar in our Plante seminar series. Being that this is a new series, please bear with us on the slim chance there are any unforeseeable technical challenges. This series is brought to you by Plante and ASPB. My name is Melanie Binder, and I am your host for today's seminar, Communicate Your Research Efficiently by Using Graphical Abstracts, and today's speaker is Frederic Bouche, postdoctoral researcher in plant molecular biology at University of Wisconsin. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few things to make sure you get the most out of attending this seminar. First is, please feel free to ask questions using the chat box in your GoToTraining control panel on the right. These questions will be read and answered periodically by Mary Williams during the seminar as we transition from one topic to the next. A recording of the seminar will be made available along with associated materials within a few days, and if you need any technical assistance at all during this webinar, please feel free to email me at mbinder@aspb.org. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn the seminar over to Frederic.
Hi, thank you, Manny, for this nice introduction. So what I will speak to you about today is communicating effectively using scientific infographics and graphical abstract. It's actually the same thing. So my name is Frederic Bouche. I'm a postdoc at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the lab of Professor Amatino. And before going much ahead into the infographics topic, I will just speak a bit about my background. So I'm from Belgium. I did my master in biochemistry and molecular biology at the University of Liège, and I did a PhD in plant science in the Professor Perrier's lab, where I worked on the flowering time regulation in Arabidopsis thaliana. And since December 2015, I am a postdoc in the Professor Amatino's lab at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. If you need to contact me to ask any question that you do not have the occasion to ask during this webinar, just feel free to drop a question either on Twitter, my ID is just at the bottom of the screen, or through email. And if you want to know more about what I do as a scientist, just feel free to surf on my website. So how did I started using and creating infographics? Actually, it started in 2012. And I started at that point using vector graphics. I will use this word a lot during this presentation, so I will just define it a bit later on, but just what you need to know right now is that vector graphics are a bit different from regular images in that they are not made of pixels, but of vectors. Anyone who already used Adobe Illustrator actually made vector graphics. And I started using these vector graphics in 2012 because I did a figure for a scientific paper, and it included a lot of phylogenetic trees, which were huge, and I needed to fold the tree and to have a neat arrangement for the tree, and so I began using Adobe Illustrator to do that, and this is the first figure I did in Adobe Illustrator. Then, seeing the power of such a tool, I already had in the back of my mind an idea, and this was to create an overview of the flowering time regulation in Arabidopsis thaliana. And actually, vector graphics allows you to create different layers of complexity and to add information on your schemes. And this is actually what I did, and I created an interactive database of flowering time genes, and I did that together with Professor Guillaume Lebet and also other colleagues. And actually, to make these schemes, so the scheme you see currently on the screen is totally interactive. You can click on anything, not here in the presentation, but on the website. You can go on the website to see it. And you can click on any elements, and you will have, it will be interactive. You will see information about the genes, etc. And to do so, actually, I followed a 3-day training. So at this point, I want to emphasize that in most big universities, you have an access to Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator licenses. If not, it's pretty expensive, so this is a big drawback. But in many universities, you will have access to it for free. And also, you will have access to free or cheap trainings to master Illustrator. So if this is the case in your university, do not hesitate to go and do that. It's very, very useful. After came the time to write my thesis. All the non-scientific figures in my thesis were done using Adobe Illustrator, so I got better at it. And I also started doing, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, a bit of different things using infographics. So I started to do these structure. This is a structure of my thesis, which is presented in a kind of an infographic way. It's a mix between a mind map and an infographic. And then after, in 2016, I started doing what we can call infographics. And these are two examples of the one I did for some of my publications. So, but first, let's define what is an infographic. The word infographic is a contraction between information and graphics. If you go on the web and you look for a definition, this is what you will end up with. So an infographic is a visual presentation of information in the form of a chart, graph, or other image accompanied by minimal text and intended to give an easily understood overview, often of a complex subject. So this is what you see here on the right-hand side of the screen. It was a pretty complex article, but I could break it down in small pieces and present it in a clear and manageable way, and that basically any scientist can understand. So the goal of this presentation is to show you the different resources, guidelines, and techniques I use to create infographics for my scientific work. So here, infographics is actually graphical abstract. So why infographics? Well, you know that this old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this is true. Images engage. So you probably know that visuals are processed more rapidly than text. So when you see an image, your brain will work faster to recognize and identify what it is than it would do with text. And I think the ratio is about 60,000, which is huge. Also, many people respond better to visuals than plain text. So I think it's about 30% of the people who will understand better a visual than they would do with text. I am this kind of guy. Also, once you create your infographics or a graphical abstract, the graphics you created can be used in other contexts. So for example, when you do a graphical abstract, you will be able to use your figures to put them into slides, into presentation, or to put them online, to use them on Twitter and so on. Infographics are eye-catching. So it means that it will increase the engagement of the readers if you use them on social media. It also increases the number of share and retweet. You very well know that when you're in your Twitter feed, if you're on Twitter, you will have a lot of information. You won't read every tweet. But when you have a nice image, you stop by and you read it, and eventually, if you like it, you will share it. So in this context, infographics are very useful. So the goal of infographics is to increase the visibility of your work, to break down and simplify complex messages. And this is very important because it allows you to engage with scientists outside of your area of expertise that wouldn't have read your paper because it's not in their field, but seeing an infographics, they will stop by, read it, and they may engage with you. So this is a pretty nice way to engage with people outside of your domain of expertise. Also, it usually increases the knowledge retention of the readers. So people seeing infographics will be more likely to remember what you did, your name, etc., etc. So this is a lot of nice plus for making infographics. So this is the outline of the talk I will give now. So I will speak briefly about the starting material, which is your research. Then I will describe what are vector graphics and which program I use to make these graphics. I will speak a bit about the web resources that are available to you to help you do these graphics. And then I will speak about how the main tricks I use to make my infographics, and then I will just quickly speak about the outreach and how to reach people with the infographics you created. So let's start with the starting material. You very well know poster, it's peer-reviewed, and then at some point you receive the comments. Well, obviously, except if you're really lucky and you did a tremendous job, you will need to do more experiments and send back your paper to peer reviewing, and this can also take months at least. So the overall process most often takes years. But one day, well, you see the light. The paper is accepted, and well, you might feel that that's it, it's out, I don't have to do anything with it anymore. But actually, it's better to engage with people, to speak about your work, to share it, and to make people aware of it. You have different techniques to do that. Either you go in meetings and presentations, or you present posters with your work. These are the two main outputs, but one that becomes more and more popular is to go on social media, such as Twitter, Facebook. You can blog about your research, and you can also put it on your personal website, etc., etc. The good news is that infographics and graphical abstracts can be used and exploited in these different type of presentation, posters, and social media exposure. So, for example, when you do an infographics, you can break it down in small pieces and put it in your meeting and presentation. You can use it as a poster. If you do so, however, I would advise you to, if you do a graphical abstract without a lot of text, which is better, I would advise if you go into a meeting to print like the abstract and additional methods and eventually additional results if you want to present this as a poster. And you can, of course, use it as is on the social media. So infographics are very useful for all that. So is there any question until now? No, nothing? Okay, so I will go on. So I will now speak a bit about how to do what are vector graphics and what program you can use to do these graphics. So the two main kinds of graphics are vector graphics. This is the case of SVG, for example, which is probably the most popular vector graphic format. And you also have raster graphics. The big difference between them is the way the data are stored inside for the figure. So raster data are actually pixels. It's like when you take a picture with your camera, you will have a nice looking picture, but if you zoom in a lot, you will see the pixels. This is how the data are stored. Now, if you look at vector graphics, it's a bit different. Vector graphics are made of vector. So for each shape, you have actually a lot of different points. Here, we just take point A and point B, and they have a coordinate on the X and the Y axis, both for point A and point B. And then there is a path between these 2 points, which is here the blue arrow. And this path is actually not really a draw. It's actually, it has attributes that define its shape. So the shape of the line of the vector is defined by mathematical attributes. And this is a major difference because it's not made of pixels but of vectors. And it means that if you zoom in, like you can see here, if you zoom indefinitely on a vector graphic image, you won't see any pixels, while you would see them on a raster graphic. So, as I told you here, just a summary. So vector graphics are based on vectors, not pixels. You can zoom indefinitely on them. They have a smaller file size. This is true for simple objects. If you have really complex objects or photos, it will the file will be bigger than with raster graphics. And the main formats are SVG, EPS, Adobe Illustrator format, and of course PDF that you all know. And you all know that if you zoom a lot in a PDF, you won't see the pixels. And this is because the data are stored in vectors. The raster graphics, on the other hand, are based on pixels. They are compatible with any system, so you do not need to have a specific program to open them. And they are really efficient for complex images such as photos. And the main format, but there are a lot more, are PNG, JPEG, TIFF, PMP, you also have GIFs, etc., etc. So let's go to the program on which you can do both of these types of graphics. Well, you probably know Microsoft Paint, which is one program to make raster-graphics. This is also the case of GIMP, which is free and which is pretty nice. And you also have Adobe Photoshop and actually all the camera picture tools. Now, if you go on the vector graphic part, the main and most used is Adobe Illustrator. This is the one I will talk about today. You also have Corel Draw that you only can use on Windows. Also, you have Sketch on Mac, which is less expensive, but I never used it, so I cannot help you with this one. And I also used a bit Inkscape, which is pretty nice, and it's totally free. So today, and you also have, yeah, I didn't mention it, you also have more and more free online tools that you can use, but I never dealt with them, so I cannot be of much help with these ones. Can I switch between vector graphics and raster graphics? Of course. So when you have a vector graphics, so let's say an image in Adobe Illustrator, you can just export it. You go in File, Export, and you can export your file into a PNG or a JPEG or a TIFF or whatever you want, and it will create pixels out of your vector graphic. Can I go the other way around? Take a picture with pixels and create vectors out of it? The answer is yes. You can do it, and it's called image tracing. But however, it's not always possible. So sometimes you cannot do that because the image is too complex. Let's take these three daisy flowers images that I found online. I found them free of copyright, so I will tell you a bit later on about using images without any copyright or finding open copyright. This is the case for these images. And the thing is, some of these images you can image trace them, and some you cannot do that. So the first one is pretty easy because it's a simple one, so you can easily use the automatic tool to create an image trace of this flower. For the second one, it's a bit more complicated, but you still can do it. And the third one, it's a no way. It's not possible. It's way too complex. In this kind of situation, when it's too complex, when the automatic tracing is not possible, you still can use the drawing tools of, for example, Illustrator to draw the plant you wanna draw. So, for example, here it's an Arabidopsis flower, and this is how I did it. So what I did, I found a picture I liked of Arabidopsis. I imported it into Illustrator, and I locked it. So I couldn't do anything with the picture. It was in the background, and I couldn't move it, touch it, or anything. And I began to draw on top of it, like making a carbon copy with a pencil. And I could do this this Arabidopsis flower. One thing I should add right now is that I'm really bad at drawing in real life, but here, when you are on the computer, you can try again, and you can have pretty nice results, such as this flower. So let's speak quickly about the resources that are available to you to make vector graphics and also to find images, such as I showed before. And so this is first the free photo database that I use the most. So when you do a presentation, a poster, or anything, and you want to find a nice picture, there are different ways to find really nice pictures. You can go and Google image. I'll go into that just a bit later, but you can also use other websites. And one that I really love is Unsplash. You can find this kind of plant images. It's not only plants, but you have a few hundred images of plants. And actually on this website, the images are uploaded by usually semi-professional and professional photographers. The pictures are curated, and you have only really nice high-level pictures, such as this one. And it's CCO copyrighted. So I won't go into too much details about that. But the thing is that for images, you have different types of copyright. And the CCO copyright is very interesting because basically you can do whatever you want with the picture. So you can use it, you can reuse it for even for commercial use, I think, but you can also modify it in Photoshop or Illustrator. You can image trace it, you can do whatever you want with these pictures. Another nice resource is the New York Library digital collection, which allows you to have access to a lot of the images that are stored on the New York Digital Library. There are more than 700,000 images you can access to, and they are in the public domain. So you can use them, but I'm not sure you can modify them. And of course, you have Google Image. Make sure if you want to reuse Google Images images that you find on Google Image, to select the tool version and use the copyright drop-down menu and select the type of copyright you would like to. So for example, here you can click on label for reuse with modification, and with these images you're supposed to be able to do anything you want, even commercial things. So just make sure to check the copyright when you do this kind of things. You can also find free icon sets and illustrations. So, for example, is the case of flat icons. You can just Google search the other one, and they're pretty nice. But here, for example, this is the example of flat icons. You can find nice icons about plants. So here I use the keyword plants to search for these ones. Just one thing: the copyright are not CCO, so I'm not sure you can do whatever you want with them. So just make sure to check the copyright before using it, especially for commercial use. Now comes the time of the fonts. Fonts are really important when you do infographics. You have to find fonts that are easily read, that are quickly interpreted. And you have a lot of fonts that are pre-installed on your computer. You can use these, but you can also, if you want to be a bit more original, find new ones. And the main website I use for that are Font Scribble, which is a website on which you can find free fonts, and you can also find fonts you have to pay for. It's up to you to select the one you like. And you also have Google Fonts. Google Fonts is pretty nice, as it allows you to access to more than 800 font families. And they are also in an open copyright, so you can do a lot of things. I think you can even modify the font if you want to, but you cannot sell it back after, which makes sense. You also have tools that allows you to find which font you are reading. So What Font, for example, is a plugin that you can install. It works for Chrome, for Safari. I don't know if it works for Internet Explorer, but probably there are alternatives to that. And these font finders are very interesting because when installed on your web browser, you can click on them and then go on the web page you're currently on and check what font is currently displayed. So, for example, I went on the web page of Plante and I just put my mouse on the subtitle here, and I saw that it was Minion Pro. And if I like Minion Pro, then I can try to use this font for my own infographics, if it's free. I don't know if this particular one is free or not. If you do not want to go into the rabbit hole of using Adobe Illustrator, and if you do not want to do it because you do not have the time, there are online infographic builders. I never use these ones, but usually they are free at the beginning, and then at some point you have to pay for them. But I never use them, so I cannot give a lot of advices about these ones. And finally, of course, the main thing is probably to find inspiration. So just go on these different websites. I put here two that speak specifically about science, but there are many others that talk about a lot of different topics. So just feel free to navigate and find inspiration. I also bought some books about it, and so just feel free to get inspiration where you can find it. So is there any question at that point?
Yeah. Hi there, everybody. It's Mary. First of all, I'm glad that we'll have these slides available so that I can jot down all of those URLs. But we had a couple questions about how you go about tracing, like your Arabidopsis drawing. Do you have a particular piece of hardware that you use?
No, I will show my hardware just after. I use my trackpad. So I usually do not use a mouse. I use a trackpad, but I will show some tools that are available into Illustrator. I have a few videos to show how I do the main tricks to draw. So I'll show that a bit later on. But I do that with a trackpad. But there is a tool which is called the pen tool in Illustrator, which allows you to draw curves and things like that. And so it's just, you click, you create points, and then you create curves, and you can do the shapes like that. So you can do it with a mouse really easily.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So let's go on. Now we have the vector graphic program, so it's Illustrator, and you also have the web resources to work on your illustrations. And now let's see how to draw these illustrations. So we're just speaking about it. This is my hardware. This is my setup. This is a picture I took at home a few days ago, and this is typically how I work. So I have the main screen on which I display my infographics. I have the second screen on which I put the resources, and I use the resources on this second screen. I use a trackpad. It's a personal preference. I could use a mouse. I do not have a specific pencil to draw because I'm really bad at hand drawing, but you could use so. I think that Illustrator is compatible with that. And you also use the keyboard quite often. I use my keyboard all the time because you have a lot of shortcuts that once you're familiar with Illustrator, you will use all the time. And I will just speak about one of them just now. So here are some useful tricks I use when I use Adobe Illustrator. These are the main thing that once you know these tricks, you will be way more familiar with the use of Illustrator. But after, you just have to play and play and play again with Illustrator to be really familiar with it and do things quickly. So first, I will speak a bit about the organization of a typical Illustrator worksheet. Then I will just show you how to call for the grid to help align objects together. I will also, I was speaking about the keyboard, I will also show you the use of the Shift key. This is very interesting because I think it works also with Keynote, that's for sure, but I think it also works with PowerPoint. The Shift key is really magical. And you also have the pen tool, which is very, very useful. You can also create several artboards in Illustrator, and this is a very, very handy feature that allows you to duplicate the work as you're progressing into your illustration. I will also speak a bit about versioning. So this is one of my main advice: create versions all the time of your work. Then I will speak a bit about the Pathfinder, which is very, very useful to create, to cut shapes and merge them together. So if you have two circles, you can merge this circle or cut them. I will show that just in a minute. And you also have image tracing. This is what I spoke to you about a bit before, which is the creation of vector graphics out of pixel images. So let's start with the typical organization of an Illustrator worksheet. So when you open Illustrator, this is what it looks like. There are a lot of buttons, there are a lot of things, and it might be overwhelming at first. But actually, there are a few tools that you will use all the time, at least at the beginning, and others you won't care about them. So
can I ask you real quickly which version of Illustrator you're using? Which version of Illustrator is it?
This is the CC version. I think it's the 2017 or the late 2016. So now in Illustrator, before they were making versions year after year. It was CS4, CS5, CS6, etc. and now they created what they call the Creative Cloud, which is CC, and they update it like every 6 months or something, and it stays the CC version, but it's the CC version 2016, 2017, etc. This is the last one actually, because I reinstalled everything on my computer a few weeks ago, so this is really the last one that they released. And so this is how it looks when you first open Illustrator. So you have the main tools, which are on the left of the screen, which are the tools you will use most of the time. Most of them I do not even know what they are for, because I do not use them often. I probably should invest some time in finding what they all do, but I mostly use the one on the top of this and the one at the very bottom of it. On the top of the screen, you have these different files which are open. So here I had like probably 10 different Illustrator files that were open, and you can see all of them and switch between them so that you can copy part of them and put them in another file. On the right-hand side of the screen, you have the custom tools. So these are tools that you can open, close, and that are not essential and that are very specific to what you want to do. And then the big white square is your artboard. It's a bit like in PowerPoint. You have your the artboard too that you can work in, and everything that is outside won't be printed or exported when you want to export it. The main tools are these ones. These ones are used all the time. So you have on the top of the screen, you have the line thickness that allows you, for example, if you draw a square, to increase the size of the border. You have line color, which allows you to change the color of the border, and you have the fill color, which allows you to change the color of the fill-in or to remove the color of the fill-in. You also have on the left-hand side of the screen at the bottom, you have the switch fill and block colors, which allows you to just quickly switch between the color of the border and the color of the fill. This is also very useful. Of course, for all these things, there are keyboard shortcuts. I won't speak about these shortcuts, but they are very useful, and I use them quite often. Now, the two main selection tools, and that will be that for these the general organization of an Illustrator document. So these two different selection tools are pretty different, and they do different things. The black arrow is called the selection tool, and it allows you to select the roll object. So if you have a shape, here a rectangle, and you click on it with this black arrow, you will select the roll rectangle. If you use the white arrow, which is the direct selection tool, actually you can select parts of the shape. So for example, here I had the same square. I could select only the bottom right point, the bottom right angle, and just move it on your screen, and you can thus change the shape. So this is really interesting, and you can create a lot of different things, and you can also, but it's a bit more tricky, I would need more time to go into that, but you can create in your shape more points and move these points and create a totally different shape. So this is it for the general organization of a file. Now I will quickly show you how to get the grid. So the grid is, of course, useful to to align your different objects on your Illustrator worksheet. So you go into the view at the very top of your screen, into the view menu, and then you have the show grid, and this is what you obtain. You can see here that just below the show grid, you can have snap to grid, snap to pixel, and snap to point, which are different ways of aligning objects and making the points of a shape snap either to the grid, to the pixel, or to very specific points. Now, if you want to draw very straight objects, straight lines, for example, you will use the Shift key. It's essential. The pen tool is also something very nice. I have a little video about that. So here I selected first at the left-hand side of the screen, you will see I selected the line tool, which is the tool that is here in black. And if you hold the Shift key, if you do not do that, it's very difficult to make straight lines. But now, if you maintain the Shift key, you can draw straight lines very, very easily. This is the case here. You see that the line is perfectly straight. Now you have the pen tool, which is this tool, which allows you actually to create, still by holding Shift, a straight line, but you can continue the line, and it will create new points, and it can create the complex shapes. And you also can close the shape, like you will see here. And if you close the shape, you have like this complex shape. And if you use the direct selection tool, you could move part of it. And now, essential. If you maintain the click, you can create round shapes. This is very useful, and it allows you to create very complex shapes. For example, this looks a bit like an Arabidopsis petal. And then now you can use the tool I presented you before, the swap fill and stroke. Click it, and you will fill the shape with the color, and that's it. You have what could look like an Arabidopsis petal. And now, if you use the direct selection tool, so the white arrow, you could select specific points, move them, and you can also select I don't know if you saw, but when I did these rounded shapes, you have antlers that are here, and you could select them with the white arrow, move them to change the roundness of the shape. So this is very useful, and this is a fantastic tool. One other main advice is to create several artboard and use versioning. So this is a typical type of artboard I have when I work. I did this a few years ago now, but these are Arabidopsis flowers, Arabidopsis rosettes, and stuff like that. And when I want to change a color, change something, try something that I will next erase, I usually duplicate my artboard. And this is made using the artboard tool, which is on the very, very left. So if you select this thing, this icon, and then you draw a rectangle, you will create a new artboard. So this is something that is very, very useful. Also, versioning is essential. You have this tool, which is called, you have in the file menu, you have the classical save as, save a copy. And this is a fantastic tool because it allows you not to duplicate it. It won't open anything new. It will just save a copy in the background, in the folder you want, that won't be open. It's just a time point in your work. And this is very useful so that if you do crappy thing after, if you erase everything, you can go back to a previous version. I use that all the time. You could also use the classical Control-Z or Command-Z on a Mac to go back in time, but you only have a certain amount of possibility to go back. So it's something that you need to be aware of. Now there is the Pathfinder, which is a fantastic tool to cut and merge shapes. So the Pathfinder, unfortunately, we cannot see it here, but it's also in the window menu on the top. You can go just here above and see that. Also here, just would like to stop. Oh, sorry about that. So here you have also when you in the tool menu, when you see these icons, you see a really small white arrow under the icon, and it means that actually there are several tools that are stacked there. And so if you click on them, you can find the other tools. So for example, here I will select the ellipse tool, and then by holding the Shift key, you will be able to create perfect circles, which would not be the case otherwise. Here I just pick a color, and then I open the Pathfinder tool. It's in the window. You cannot see it here, but it's the classical window. And then when I click on it, it will go on the right-hand side of the screen, so in the custom tool. And you first need to select your object, and then you can go into the Pathfinder. And actually, you have different types of tools, such as Unite, which would unite your file, or Divide. Here, I click on the Divide tool, and actually it will create a new shape for the intersection between the two other forms. And so you can use and modify independently those different things. This is a tool I use probably every time I use Illustrator. I use this tool. Finally, the image trace is the tool I talked to you about already before, which allows you to create vector graphics from pixel images. So let's go back to our daisy flower. And here, this is a pretty simple image that is pretty easily transformed into a vector. So it's something I found on Google Image using the copyright reuse with modification. And this image, you can basically do whatever you want. And here I want to create a vector out of a PNG image. So first I have it to be selected. And then here you can see the menu. So it's the same than the Pathfinder. It's the window menu. And then I go to the image trace tool. I click on it. And once again, it will appear on the right-hand side of the screen. Here you have a lot of different presets, such as photo, logo, line art, etc. Here it's a pretty heavy photo that I will use a high definition photo, high res photo, but you can try other ones. Now I click on, I do the image tracing. It might take some time depending on the computer. It's done. And now to separate the shape into different vectors, I click expand. And now this is the white arrow, so the direct selection tool. I can select several or one single point, and I just can move it. It becomes a vector. And so I could change like that different parts of the flower and do basically whatever I want with it. I could simplify it by removing some points, etc., and I could do a lot of things with this. I use that a lot at first. This is how I begin with Illustrator, doing these things, but now I mostly draw on top of other drawings. So that's it for the main tricks. If you know these tricks, if you master them, you're already halfway there. Then after, it's just a matter of investment and try to keep things, well, to keep playing with that. It takes some time to get to satisfying results, but anyone can do it for sure. Our main advice when it comes to create an infographic is keep it simple. You often have very complex research papers, very complex results, but if you want to communicate efficiently, you will have to make it simple so that people can have a take-home message pretty straightforward. So do not bother with all the details. Try to identify the main message and go with it. You can leave empty space. It will make the infographics look a bit more aerial, more not too too busy with things everywhere. So you just leave free space. It's called negative space in photography, and it's really nice to use that. So for example, here around the plant, you do not have a lot of things, and it leaves some space, and it's better for the eye. You should, of course, adapt to your audience. So depending on the type of public you want to communicate to, you will need to adapt. If you go for the general public, you will do fancier things with less science in it. But if you go for a scientific audience or for a graphical abstract, you will, of course, have to be a bit more scientific. Before releasing it, show it to colleagues and friends so that they will be able to give you feedback. So friends outside of science, if it's for the general public, and colleagues if it's for a scientist, or friends in science if it's for a general scientific public. Of course, have fun. At first, you won't probably have a lot of fun with it, but once you begin to master the tools, you will have a lot of fun, trust me. So when you do infographics, I usually have the same type of structure. So I use the title of the article. You can, if the title is really complicated, you can make a simpler one. But do not go too simple, and it should be self-standing. So people should understand what you want to do just with a title, like a good article title. Then for the introduction, you can either go with your material or go put a general context or a more specific context depending on your work. It's really up to you. And then I try to present a very specific method if it's required to understand what we did, and to put it in a visual way. So here, for example, I described how we did a QTL analysis using visual descriptions. And then when you present the results, just try to simplify them without compromising the data. So you have to show the data as they are. So for example, these are the real QTL peaks. I just draw on top of them, but they are really what we observed when we did the analysis. But I modified it a bit so that I could make the peak stand out. So this is also something you should do. For a conclusion, just stick with one main conclusion, one main thing that you can represent in a visual way, and that allows you to impact the reader, and so that they will remember the bottom line and the take-home message. And then try to put a link to your paper, or maybe to more information if it's not yet published. When it comes to colors, I try to keep it also simple, so I use 3 colors, not many more. Here, for example, I use basically green, gray, and a bit of blue. And also, I use white, but I didn't consider it as a color here. But so it's 4, maximum 5. Try not to go more than that. And you have an online tool, which is the Adobe Color tool, which is very handy, and that allows you to pick colors that match well together. I usually try to stick with 2 fonts maximum. If you're not familiar with fonts, different type of fonts, you probably won't notice it, but here there are 2 different types of fonts, and these fonts are Avenir and Myriad Pro. When it comes to text, and this is what I did for the title, you can change the font of and the color of the text to highlight the keywords. When it comes to the results, I usually change the opacity to highlight key results. So for example, here you see that the opacity of what is under the threshold is it's a bit opacified, so that what is above the threshold, the peaks stands out. In the conclusion, try to use eye-catching colors to improve the knowledge retention so that people will understand and take back the take-home message. And finally, try to use links with custom short URLs. So the link, you can go on the web and ask for short links, and you can use your own keywords. So for example, here it's bit.do/brachy-qtl, because it's a brachypodium paper about QTL. Finally, this is the last part. It's going to be quick. Other people have dealt with the outreach pretty well, and I will send a link to a talk I really like about that. And the outreach is how you will communicate your infographics. Of course, you can use it in conferences and as posters. If you do so, as I told you before, if you do so in posters, just try to either stand near your poster to be able to explain more, but I advise you to print the methods and the abstract so that people can look a bit more deeper and take this sheet of paper home if they want to go a bit deeper into your work. If you do that for slides, you can take part of the infographics and put them on slides and just play with them. You did the graphics, now you just can exploit them and use them in any way you want. You can use, of course, infographics to blog about papers, getting more popular. I really like people blogging about their papers. It can show, for example, the history behind the paper, and this is really nice. I also use that on my personal website. So this is my website online, and you see that actually these are pieces of the infographics I took to make icons for my papers, and I just took parts of the infographics and I put them in a new shape so that they all look similar. So it's something when it's when you draw that, you can do whatever you want with them. Finally, of course, you can advertise them on Twitter or Facebook. I don't use Facebook much, to be honest, but I use more Twitter. And when you send your graphical abstract on Twitter, it will reach more people than if you did not add a graphical abstract, because people like to see nice-looking infographics. And so the good thing is that online attention is now totally part of the metrics that people use to rate an article. It's not only citations, it's also the online attention. So for example, here, this is our article. I went on the plant physiology web page, and you see that you have this donut on the bottom right of the screen, and this donut is actually the Altmetrics score. Altmetrics is a website that monitors the online attention that your article receives. And so by tweeting your article with infographics, you can increase the online attention that is received by your article. You can also check the online attention on Impact Story, which is a pretty nice website that allows you to track everything that is related to your publication and that is not article citation. If you want to know more about these topics, I really encourage you to check these two presentations by my former colleague and friend Guillaume Lobet, who presented first the scientific valorization of your work, so all the tools are available online to valorize your work, and also he made a beginner's guide about the social media and research, and it's pretty nice if you are not into Twitter yet. Finally, you can put your research or your infographics on Figshare. Figshare is a platform that allows you to add additional information that are not articles, because articles are not the only output of scientists usually. And the good thing with Figshare is that it gives you a digital object identifier. And this digital object identifier is a unique identifier that people can refer to and that will be permanent, so that your work can be cited. You can do that for infographics, but also for data sets, figures, or anything you want. And what you put there, or your thesis, for example, and everything you put there can be cited by people as if it were a real something. Also, what you put on Figshare is synchronized with Impact Story and also with the OrgID profile, if you have one, and so that people see that you made these things and that it is part of your work. So thank you very much for listening to me today. It's your turn to play, so just feel free, of course, to contact me either through Twitter or by email if you have any question, anything else. And of course, we can continue the discussion on the Plante platform, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic. That was great. We had a couple of questions. One of them was, are you finding that journals are accepting your infographics as part of the sort of formal publication?
Well, I didn't do it yet, but several journals accept graphical abstract and ask even for it. I didn't use it yet, so I didn't read the guidelines, to be honest, of the journals I published in to be sure if I could use it. But I'm not sure that if there are guidelines to respect. And here, honestly, I was totally free to do whatever I want. I didn't respect any guideline except the one I put on myself. But some journals accept it, so just check. And I know this is the case for several journals.
Great. I think that it was you who was talking about building a repository for vector graphics. Was that you or Guillaume?
Oh, yes. Well, we discussed about it with Guillaume and Larry York. And yeah, it would be great to do that, but we didn't find a platform yet. But this is true. I didn't mention it, and we would like to do that. And if any attendee has an idea about which repository to use, we would be really happy to have information about that, because it's true that we would be really happy to make all these graphics available to anyone who wants to use them and modify them. They're there. We did them, and Guillaume and Larry also did great works for to put on vector graphics for their research. And so, yeah, we would be happy to do that, but we didn't find a good platform to do that yet.
Excellent. All right, I think we'll turn it over to Melanie, but thanks from everybody who was here. And if anyone does create an infographic, make sure and let me know so I can share it on the ASPB social media sites.
Okay, and yes, and thank you again, Frederic, for sharing this useful information, and for Mary for moderating those great questions that triggered some more conversation. And we wanted to again thank everybody for attending our seminar today. And as mentioned, the recording link is going to be posted in the Planté community within the next few days. Also, please look for emails announcing registration for future seminars coming up this spring. And again, if you have any ideas for topics, please email us at community@planté.org for consideration. So our follow-up email to you, which you'll receive shortly, will include this information as well as a link to the discussion about the seminar on Planté. We encourage you to join the Planté to continue the conversation, to ask Frederic any further questions and share ideas. Thank you all very much and have a great day.